Hey guys, tonight we slip into a world where survival isn't a triumph, it's a sentence. You're going to walk barefoot through narrow streets slick with filth, past houses marked with crude red crosses, and into the stifling air of a time when every cough was a death sentence. The plague. You've heard of it. But tonight, you'll live it. Well, try to. You're about to learn that sometimes, dying quickly might have been the kindest exit. Because for the ones left behind, life got darker than anyone likes to remember. And yes, you probably won't survive this. At least, not emotionally. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment with your location and local time. Let's see who else is staying up with us tonight. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake to silence. Not peaceful silence, this is absence. No rooster crowing, no baker's cart, no clatter of feet outside your shuttered window. The only sound? The low groan of a wheel as the death cart creaks by, its driver muttering under his breath, too tired to shout the usual, "Bring out your dead." You're in a city somewhere in Europe. London, maybe, or Florence. It doesn't matter. The story is the same. It's the year 1348. The Black Death has arrived, and it's not leaving quietly. You open your door to air that tastes like rot. A damp, coppery stench seeps in, part sweat, part sewage, part sorrow. Down the alley, a dog gnaws something limp and pale. You don't look too closely. There's no good answer. You step over a heap of straw soaked in who knows what, and join a few others clustered around a well. No one speaks. Talking feels dangerous, like breathing does. Someone offers you a cloth soaked in rosewater to hold over your face. You can't afford rosewater, but she gives it anyway. That's what desperation does. Makes strangers generous, then makes corpses of them. Historians still argue whether the plague came from fleas on rats, or fleas on humans, or ships from the east. Doesn't matter to you. What matters is that people are dying so fast, the priest stopped ringing the bell for each death. He just rings once every morning now. One toll. That's it. You walk past your neighbor's house. Quiet. Yesterday they were arguing about onions. Today, the door's marked with a red X and a scrawled plea. Lord have mercy. You can't help but think the onions were probably the last normal thing they ever fought over. That house used to smell like stewed cabbage and laundry. Now it just smells wrong. A child darts across the road, barefoot, wild-eyed. No adults chase her. You think she's the one whose mother collapsed in the market 3 days ago. No one helped her. You didn't either. She'd started coughing, and that was enough to clear the entire square. You hate yourself for remembering how fast you ran. People say the plague started with ships. Galleys from the Black Sea, docking with cargo and corpses alike. But the disease moves faster than stories. By the time you heard the rumors, it was already inside your walls. And here's the kicker. This isn't even the first wave. Plague had flirted with Europe before, back in the 6th century, during the reign of Emperor Justinian. But now? Now it's serious. The bacteria means business. Not that you know what bacteria are. You just know people get sick fast. First the chills, then the swellings. Great black lumps in the groin, armpits, neck. The word bubo makes its way into everyday speech. It's somehow become more common than bread. You reach the market square, or what's left of it. Most stalls are empty. A woman sells wax charms stamped with saints' faces, promising protection. She clutches one herself, eyes darting. You buy one out of politeness, not faith. She smiles, toothless, and touches your cheek with a trembling hand. You want to flinch. You don't. Back home, you boil water and sprinkle rosemary around the doorframe. It's something your grandmother used to do when someone had a fever. You figure old habits can't hurt now. Outside, the shadows stretch longer than they should. Night feels heavier these days. You've stopped lighting candles after dark. Too many moths. Too many memories. A cat slinks past your window, carrying something limp in its mouth. You wonder if it's a rat or a toe. You laugh, just a little, because that's what it takes to stay sane. Fringe beliefs are everywhere now. Some folks say Saturn and Jupiter lined up wrong. Others say it's punishment for the Pope living in Avignon instead of Rome. Some even claim the Earth's gone sour, like spoiled wine. Meanwhile, the ones who don't die face a worse fate, staying alive. Because with every familiar face that disappears, your world shrinks. The people who made the jokes, who gossiped over market stalls, who knew your birthday, all gone. You keep reaching for stories you once told someone, only to realize there's no one left who remembers the punchline. And then there are the dreams, the ones where the sky bleeds, where your mother speaks to you through walls, where you dig your own grave but it's already occupied. You don't tell anyone about those dreams, but you start sleeping less. The air in your lungs feels heavier with each day, not with illness, yet, but with knowledge. The knowledge that the person you were a month ago is gone. You're not fighting for your life anymore. You're fighting for a reason to keep waking up in it. And that, honestly, is worse. You trudge down the cobbled street, past the cracked shutter of what used to be a bakery. A memory of warm bread ghosts by, replaced by a scent that's decidedly less wholesome. Decay lives here now. And the rats, well, they don't just visit, they own the place. They're everywhere. Fat, bold, and smug. As if they've inherited the world from humans and find us highly disappointing tenants. You watch one scurry across a windowsill, tail curling like a question mark. It locks eyes with you before diving into a sack of grain that no one's alive to protect. You wonder, fleetingly, if rat meat is edible. It's not even the rats that terrify you the most. It's the rot, the way flesh seems to bubble and blacken with no warning. A man you passed yesterday, alive, speaking, even cracking jokes, is now a heap under a sheet that barely covers him. You didn't know his name, but his absence punches a hole in your world just the same. At the city center, a few elders sit on crates, arguing. One insists garlic necklaces keep the illness away. Another swears by crushed emeralds taken with wine. A third says this is God's punishment for people dancing on Sundays. You nod politely, but your mind drifts. If emeralds could cure this, the rich wouldn't be dead too. Historians still argue whether the death toll in Europe was closer to 30% or 60%. You don't care about the percentages. For you, it's personal. Every person gone feels like a universe collapsed. You remember when they burned incense in the streets to cleanse the air. Now there's not enough incense left, and the only thing burning is furniture used as funeral pyres. You helped with one last week. Stacking wood, placing the bodies gently, trying not to breathe too deeply. That smell never leaves. It clings to your skin, your clothes, your soul. There's a rumor floating around about a village that walled itself off entirely, no one in or out. You imagine that life, isolated but safe. But then again, what's safety if it comes with silence? You pass the apothecary's hut. The door swings open, revealing chaos. Shelves toppled, bottles shattered, a fine layer of dust on everything. No one's been here in days. You tiptoe inside, hoping for something useful. Anything. You pocket a pouch of dried lavender and a wax-stoppered vial, labeled in Latin you can't read. Could be medicine, could be perfume, could be poison. You've stopped caring which. Outside, someone coughs violently. You freeze. It's not just a little throat clear. It's wet, rattling, the kind of cough that means something. You edge away, back into shadow, eyes wide. The sound fades, but it echoes in your ribs. People talk about the fleas now. They say the real killers are so small you can't even see them. Invisible murderers hopping from rat to man and back again, spreading death like gossip. It's almost poetic if it weren't so nightmarish. In your home, what's left of it, you try to keep things clean. Not because it works, but because it feels like control. You boil rags. You sweep dust into neat piles. You hang thyme over the windowsill. It doesn't stop anything, but it buys you minutes of feeling human. That's currency now. Feeling human. The bishop issued a new decree yesterday. No more mass funerals. Too dangerous. You're supposed to bury your own dead quietly, without ceremony. A goodbye without words, without blessings, without songs. You buried your sister last week in a shallow patch behind the stable. You marked it with a bit of ribbon. It's already gone. You used to pray every night. Now the prayers feel hollow, like whispering into a cracked jug. You still say them sometimes, more out of muscle memory than hope. But mostly, you just stare at the wall and count the cracks, pretending each one is a day survived. Fringe theories spread faster than the disease. Someone claims the plague is carried by bad dreams. Another blames certain colors, especially red. People start wearing white tunics and avoid touching anything crimson. The irony of blood being red isn't lost on you. There's even a man who walks the streets holding a mirror to his face, believing that if he can see his soul, he won't die. You passed him once. He looked terrified of what he saw. You've changed too. Your clothes are looser. Your hands shake more. And you don't flinch at dead things anymore. A few weeks ago, a body on the steps would have made you scream. Now it's just Tuesday. You used to dream of future things. Love, children, travel. Now your dreams are short loops. Fetching water, finding food, staying quiet. You've forgotten what your own laughter sounds like. But there's still a pulse in your chest. It thuds, slow but stubborn. You pass the old scribe's home. He used to write letters for people, elegant script, warm words. Now his pages flutter out the windows like dead butterflies. You catch one. A love note, unfinished. The ink smudged by time or tears. That's the worst part. The almosts. The letters that were never sent. The goodbyes never spoken. The doors never knocked on. You light a candle that night, more for company than light. It flickers like it's breathing. Outside, an owl calls, sharp and sudden. The sound slices through the silence, and for a moment you feel awake in the old way. Like a person, not a shadow. But it fades. Sleep comes in fragments now. You wake to the sound of your own heartbeat, to dreams of choking on air, to memories that aren't yours anymore. And every time you rise, you wonder, why me? Why am I still here? The rats don't wonder. They rule now. The rot doesn't care. It just spreads. You tell yourself tomorrow might be better, that someone out there is working on a cure, or that the plague will burn out. But it's not hope. Not really. It's just habit. You hear him before you see him. A slow, deliberate clop-clop, like a horse with stage fright. But it's not a horse. It's boots, wooden soles. Then, the shape emerges from the mist like something from a fever dream. Long black cloak, leather gloves, wide-brimmed hat, and the mask. You freeze. It's your town's plague doctor, though doctor might be a strong word. He's wearing that infamous beak-faced mask stuffed with herbs and posies. He looks like a bird who got invited to a masquerade and never left. The mask doesn't move, and that's the most unsettling part. It just stares, blankly, like it knows something you don't. And it's not in a hurry to tell you. The beak, in theory, is a protection device. Inside are cloves, camphor, and mint to purify the air. Because back then, People believe the plague spreads through bad smells. Miasma, which is kind of adorable until you remember what miasma smells like: sewage, corpse juice, and despair. Historians still argue whether the doctors were truly helpful or just living scarecrows. You lean toward the latter. You've never seen this man save anyone. Mostly, he writes names in a small book, sprinkles a sick room with vinegar, and nods solemnly like he's absorbing important information from the pattern of vomit stains on the floor. He approaches a nearby house. A woman opens the door a crack, then collapses in sobs when she sees him. You look away. That's the moment people dread more than the symptoms themselves. The bird-masked judgment call. If he visits, your odds plummet. The doctor raises a stick, not to hit her, but to gently push her back. That's how he avoids contact. A 6-foot cane of social distancing. Honestly, you're a little jealous. He's the only one with consistent boundaries anymore. He enters the house, and you hear muffled cries, then silence. When he emerges 10 minutes later, he drops a small pouch at the woman's feet. Maybe herbs, maybe coins, maybe nothing. He leaves without a word. You wonder what's in his notebook. A cure? A tally? A diary with day 37, everyone still dying? You almost want to ask. Almost. Later, you sit with your knees pulled to your chest, watching him from your window. He visits 5 more homes before noon. He walks like someone pacing a dream, never hurrying, never stopping long, like death's personal intern doing rounds. Once you saw a child throw rocks at him. The mask just turned slowly toward the kid. No reaction. The child ran. Smart move. People say some plague doctors aren't real doctors at all, just hired bodies in masks. Some are barbers, butchers, monks. One rumor says they're criminals who chose this over execution. Another says the masks are cursed, and the wearers forget their names. You hope that last part isn't true. But if it is, wouldn't that be easier? At dinner, meaning a piece of stale bread and a turnip, you talk aloud to no one. It helps. You tell the wall what you saw, how the doctor left one house and tied a ribbon to the door. Blue. That's new. Red means plague. White means cleared. But blue? No one knows. Maybe it's an experiment or a mistake. You make a note to avoid blue doors, just in case. The next day, you follow the doctor. Not close enough to get noticed, just enough to see. He stops at the edge of the market, where a young man lies twitching under a tarp. The mask tilts. The cane lifts the tarp like he's poking at leftovers. Then, for the first time, he speaks. Just one word. You can't hear it, but the man stops twitching. Not from magic, from death. You shiver. The doctor turns, looks straight at you. You freeze. You've been so careful staying hidden in alleys and shadows. But somehow, he knows. The beak mask points right at you. Then, he lifts his gloved hand and waves. It's not comforting. You back away, bump into a barrel, and knock it over with a loud clang. When you look up again, he's gone. That night, you dream of the mask. It chases you through your home, growing larger with every turn. You wake gasping, heart in your throat. You touch your neck for swelling. Nothing. Yet, you sit up, drenched in sweat. It's the 4th night in a row you've dreamed of masks. You wonder if your mind's catching something too. Outside, someone whistles. A low, tuneless melody. You peek through the shutters. It's the doctor. He's sitting by the well, casually swinging his legs like a teenager. The beak mask turned toward the stars. You don't think he knows you're watching. Or maybe he does, and just doesn't care. You suddenly wonder who he talks to, if anyone. Does he go home to a family? To silence? Or does he remove the mask and sit in the dark, whispering names to himself until sleep takes them away. You almost feel sorry for him. Almost. Fringe beliefs about plague doctors are everywhere. Some think the mask gives them immunity. Others believe they can smell the truth. Like, if you're lying about being sick, they'll sniff it out. One woman claimed the mask cried when her husband died. You don't know what to believe anymore. But you do know this. The presence of that costume in your neighborhood means your odds are worse than they were yesterday. By week's end, the doctor stops visiting entirely. His last appearance was 2 days ago, near the mill. Since then, nothing. You ask around, no one's seen him. Theories swirl. He caught it, one man mutters. He left town, says another. He was never real, whispers a child, clutching a rag doll. The streets feel more dangerous without him. Even the illusion of help was something. Now it's just raw survival again. No masks, no notes, no slow, clopping footsteps. Just you, the dark, and the rats. And you know what? You miss the Birdman. You don't mean to linger, but your feet take you there. The little square where the doctor used to stop and scribble in his book, where the bird song still fights to be heard over the heavy hush of dread. You sit on the cold stone bench and scan the houses. Still no mask, still no cane, just the usual silence, thick as wool. It's a weird thing, missing someone you never spoke to. But when your world shrinks to whispers and shadows, even a masked figure with glassy eyes becomes something solid. Predictable. Now that he's gone, unpredictability creeps in again, like fog under the door. You close your eyes. Try to imagine what the plague doctor saw each day. Did he keep track of everyone's names? Or did they blur into one long obituary? Was he searching for a cure? Or just playing the role because someone had to? Historians still argue whether plague doctors performed medical care or were more symbolic. Part scientist, part reaper. Maybe they were just theater. The mask, the robes, the rituals. All a dramatic attempt to put fear in a costume. If death has a face, at least it can be recognized. You lean back. Something crunches under you. A folded bit of parchment, sealed with wax. Not addressed to anyone. You glance around, no one watching, then break the seal. Inside, a single line. They buried the wrong man. You stare. Is it a prank? A warning? A confession? You don't recognize the handwriting. It's rushed, shaky. Could be the doctor's, could be anyone's. You flip it over. Nothing else. You read it again. And again. The wrong man. You can't shake it. That phrase loops in your head all day. The baker's boy? The miller? The man with the twitch? Your mind chews on the idea like a dog with a bone. What if someone was declared dead and buried? Alive? Not impossible. You've heard rumors of people waking up mid-funeral. One man supposedly sat up in his coffin and asked for soup, caused 5 faintings and 1 minor exorcism. You wander toward the burial fields. Not the official graveyard. That's long since overfilled. This is the overflow zone. Hastily dug trenches, half-covered mounds, makeshift markers like broom handles or spoons stuck in the dirt. You've buried people here yourself. Always fast, always quiet. The air hums here. Not with sound, but tension, the kind that buzzes against your skin, like a storm holding its breath. You spot something strange near the fence, a loose patch of dirt, darker than the rest. Not fresh, but disturbed. You crouch, gently brush the soil aside. A corner of fabric, frayed, gray, not burial cloth, looks like someone's sleeve. You dig more. Just with your hands, like a raccoon on a mission, the soil gives easily, and there it is, an arm, thin, pale, bent unnaturally at the elbow. No visible sores. You leap back, heart racing. It's not fear exactly, it's disbelief. You've seen so many dead, but this one feels different. You scan the graveyard, half expecting the bird-masked doctor to appear again, arms crossed, scolding you like a disappointed librarian. But there's no one, just wind and a few flies. You make a decision you'll probably regret. You dig deeper, not all the way, just enough to see the face. And there it is, eyes open, mouth open wider. Not in rot, but in what looks like screaming. No plague boils, no bloody froth, just terror frozen on his features. You drop the dirt and stumble back, breath shallow. They did bury the wrong man, and someone knew. Your brain scrambles. How many others? How often? Who makes the call? What if the doctor, no, someone else, is deciding who lives and who gets preemptively buried? The fringe talk starts to make sense now. People whisper of a secret council that determines infection by behavior, not symptoms. One wrong look, and poof, you're plague positive, shovel ready. You head home, but you can't stop thinking about the note. You tuck it into your coat. It feels warmer than it should, like it's alive. That night, sleep avoids you like you're contagious. You stare at the ceiling. Shadows shift across the beams. Every creak sounds like footsteps. Every breeze through the window sounds like whispering. Around midnight, you light a candle and write your own note, just in case. If they say I'm sick, they're lying. You hide it under the floorboard. The next morning, the town is buzzing. Not in the happy market day way, but in the something just happened way. People clump in groups, murmuring behind sleeves. You ask what's going on. Mass grave exhumation, someone mutters. Near the fence. You play dumb. Why? Too many false burials. They're checking for signs. You don't ask what signs. You just nod, then slip away before they start asking you questions. You return to the burial field later, cautiously. Sure enough, 3 graves are open. One body clearly alive when buried. Fingernails torn, mouth stuffed with dirt. Another wrapped too quickly, face turned blue from suffocation. The third, still unclear. A man stands nearby with a clipboard. Not the plague doctor, someone else. Young, clean. He doesn't look like he belongs. You overhear him mutter something about protocol errors. Historians still argue whether the desperation of plague times led to widespread accidental live burials, or if they were rare tragedies inflated by fear. You're not sure anymore. What you've seen feels deliberate. You leave a daisy near the edge of the field. Small gesture, pointless, maybe, but it makes you feel slightly less helpless. At home, you check under the floorboard. The note's still there. You breathe easier, until you see the door. Someone's tied a blue ribbon to your handle. Your stomach drops. No fever, no boils, no symptoms. But someone marked your door anyway. You look around. The street is empty. No mask, no cane. Just the ribbon fluttering in the breeze like it's waving goodbye. You stare at it for a long time. Then, you shut the door, bolt it, and start moving furniture in front of it. You don't feel sick, but you've seen how that ends. The ribbon still flutters, soft and silent, like a secret. You haven't opened the door in 2 days, maybe 3. You've lost count. Time's gotten slippery, like soap in a flood. Inside, your house has shrunk. The walls press in, heavy with breath and paranoia. The furniture barricade you built seems less protective now, more like a cage you built yourself. You stare at the door like it's going to speak. Maybe it will. You've run out of bread. You have 1 apple left, and a jar of something pickled you no longer trust. Hunger gnaws, but fear is louder. If you open that door, what then? Will someone be waiting? A masked doctor? A quiet man with a shovel? Or no one at all? You begin to hear things. Not loud things. Whisper things. At first you think it's the wind or the rats having another committee meeting under the floorboards. But one night, you hear your name. Software drawn out. Like a bedtime song turned eerie. You sit frozen on the floor, candle flickering shadows across the ceiling. Your name comes again, whispered from the other side of the door. You know you shouldn't. You really shouldn't. But you ask, "Who's there?" Silence. Then something you didn't expect. Laughter. Small, childlike. Then gone. You don't sleep that night. Historians still argue whether plague paranoia drove communities into mass delusions, or if survivors simply developed protective madness. You're beginning to see both as reasonable options. You start muttering to yourself, just to hear a human voice. You name the broom Thaddeus. He listens politely. By day 4 of your lockdown, you get bold. You crack the window. Not much, just enough to peek through. No one. But the ribbon is gone. Gone. You stare in disbelief. You didn't remove it, and no one knocked. But it's not there anymore. Only a faint line of dust on the door frame where it used to hang. What does that mean? Cleared? Claimed? Forgotten? You push the window wider and lean out. The street is strangely calm. Too calm. The usual signs of life: beggars, carts, coughing fits, absent. Even the pigeons seem to have taken sick leave. You decide to risk it. Door unlocked, furniture moved, breath held. You open it, nothing happens. No burst of guards, no swarm of masks, just air. Crisp, cold, tinged with something metallic. You step outside and close the door gently behind you, like you're afraid to wake it. You walk the street, not far, just to see. Every third door now has a blue ribbon. Others have red. A few, black. You pass one with a strange symbol drawn in ash above the handle. A circle with a slash. You don't ask what it means. You turn down the alley behind the butcher's. The smell hits first. Not meat. Not rot. Something worse. Sweet decay, like fruit that's been dead for weeks. You cover your mouth. You're about to leave when you hear movement. Slow, scraping. You peek around a crate. It's a man curled on the ground, rocking gently. Not from sickness, but sobbing. Deep, dry sobs that come from the bones. You step back before he sees you. People are breaking. Quietly. Completely. On your way home, you pass the baker's again. Her door is open. That's odd. She's always been careful. You glance inside. Her shop is untouched. Fresh loaves on the counter. No sign of struggle. But there's a note pinned to the door. You can't help yourself. You read it. Gone to find the sea. Bread is free. You blink. The sea? You haven't thought about the sea in months, maybe years. You imagine her walking, apron still on, feet blistering, eyes fixed on the idea of blue. Maybe she made it. Maybe she drowned trying. You take a loaf. That night you sit at your table and eat slowly. Crumbs fall like soft ash. You try to remember the last time something tasted this real. The next morning something waits at your door. Not a ribbon, a flower. White, clean, fresh. You stare at it like it's a riddle. Who left it, and why? You bring it inside, place it in the old chipped mug you once used for tea. It tilts slightly, awkward but proud. You don't know what to make of it. Outside, the fog has rolled in again. The streets blur. Your world is shrinking once more. You start to journal, not for posterity, just to feel real. You write what you see, what you remember, what you fear. Pages fill with nonsense and truth and chicken scratches. You draw the plague doctor's mask. Then, 100 versions of your own face. You begin to wonder, are you the last person on your street? On your block? In your city? One night you see light in a window across the way. Faint, flickering, a sign. You wave, no answer. But that's okay. It was enough. There are stories people tell now. Not facts, just fragments of hope disguised as myth. One says a hidden village exists, deep in the hills, untouched by plague. People there still laugh, still dance, still bake bread for fun. Another says some plague doctors were actually spies for distant kingdoms, sent to map the collapse. And a third, whispered only once, says death itself caught the plague and has been in bed ever since. You don't believe them, but you like that someone does. You place the flower by your bed before you sleep. The next morning, it's gone. In its place, a feather. White. Curved, like the edge of a mask. You don't panic. You just sit down and start writing again. You wake the next morning with the strangest feeling. Peace, not joy, not hope. Just a dull quiet where the dread usually lives. You lie there for a while, staring at the ceiling, fingers brushing the feather still on your nightstand. It's light as breath, soft as denial. Then comes the knock. 3 taps. Evenly spaced. No urgency, just confidence. You freeze. No one knocks anymore. Doors are shouted through, maybe kicked. But knocked? You approach it slowly, heartbeat thudding like a lazy drum. You don't say anything. You just listen. A voice follows. Calm, male, unfamiliar. You've been observed. Time to come. Observed? You do what any sane, cautious, plague-hardened person would do. You tiptoe away from the door, grab your coat, and quietly exit through the back window. The alley's empty, the fog forgiving. You vanish into it like ink in water. You don't stop walking until your feet ache. Then you duck into the abandoned chapel, the one with the half-collapsed roof and that weird fresco of a lion playing chess with a skeleton. Inside, it's damp and forgotten, which makes it perfect. You sit in a pew and wait for your breath to catch up. That voice didn't sound like a guard. Not quite. It was too polite, too assured, like someone delivering news they've already rehearsed. Historians still argue whether these plague summons were part of a state-run quarantine system or something more sinister, like conscription or selective cleansing. The records, when they exist, are vague on purpose. Bureaucracy doesn't leave fingerprints if it never writes anything down. As you rest, your mind drifts to the baker. Gone to find the sea. Maybe she made it, maybe she didn't. But at least she chose her direction. You start to wonder, should you? There's a rustle behind you, not a rat. Footsteps. You whip around. It's a woman, older, cloaked in a deep brown robe, face partially shadowed. She doesn't look surprised to see you. You left, she says, as if picking up a conversation you never had. Who are you? She doesn't answer. Instead, she sits in the pew beside you. You've seen the wrong graves, she murmurs. You nod slowly. You've seen the flowers. Another nod. You've seen the watchers. Goosebumps rise on your arms. The ones marking doors? She gives a faint smile. Them, yes, but also the ones above them. You think back to the man with the clipboard, the feather, the voice. There's more to this than infection, isn't there? You ask. She tilts her head. Infection was only the first fire. The rest was convenience. She tells you stories, not official histories, but hidden ones, of how entire families were removed for owning property someone else wanted. How a whisper of fever could turn a merchant's competitor into a corpse by next week. How the plague became more than a disease. It became a weapon, a curtain. Everyone feared the mask, she says, but no one asked who made the masks. You ask her what to do. Stay moving, or find somewhere they've forgotten. Then she gives you something, a tiny piece of cloth, blue and frayed, with a symbol stitched into it, a broken circle, same one you saw on that ash-marked door. What does this mean? It means you're not theirs, she says. Not anymore. You want to ask more, but she stands and disappears through a side door so quickly it feels rehearsed, like a stage exit. You stare at the symbol. Not theirs. You tuck it inside your coat. Outside, the town feels even quieter than before. A city on mute. You head toward the market square, not to shop. There's barely anything left, but because it's open, exposed, you want to see how visible you are now. Only a few stalls remain. One sells potatoes. Another, lye soap that could also pass for a brick. The rest are manned by ghosts, men and women with eyes too tired to blink. You spot someone else wearing the same stitched symbol, barely visible on their sleeve. You catch their eye. They nod. Nothing more. But it's enough. You go home one last time. You pack lightly. The note from under the floorboard, the stitched cloth, a bit of bread, and the feather. You leave the flower mug behind. As you head toward the edge of town, something odd happens. The bells ring. Not the funeral bells, not the curfew bells. The old bells. Ones that haven't sounded since festivals were legal. People step out of doorways. Some peek from windows. A few cry without knowing why. The bells toll 7 times, then stop. Historians still argue whether these unscheduled bell tolls were random malfunctions or secret signals for those who needed to disappear. No one knows who rang them, but they always preceded movement. You don't wait. You take the signal. Past the windmill. Past the orchard where nothing grows anymore. Past the field with the wrong graves. You move fast. And this time, no one follows. You keep walking long after the bells stop. The path narrows, hedged by trees whose bare limbs stretch like bony fingers, leafless even in what should be spring. The wind shifts. It's quieter here. No coughing, no shouts, no clatter of carts, just the creak of branches and the occasional snap of a twig under your boot. You pass milestones once used to guide travelers, now blank with rot, as if the land itself has tried to forget where it leads. Your stomach reminds you you're not a spirit yet. The bread is stale, but you eat it anyway, pacing your bites like they're gold coins in a world that's forgotten banking. The air tastes cleaner out here, though. Fewer ghosts in it. You come across a road sign twisted on its post. The letters are nearly gone, but you squint and make out Meyer Cross. You've heard of Meyer Cross, a tiny village, barely worth mapping, supposedly cut off when the main bridge collapsed during one of the early quarantines. No one ever rebuilt it. The story goes that Meyer Cross cured its sick with herbs and smoke and simply closed its borders, waiting out the worst. No one's confirmed if it still exists, or ever really did. But now you've got nothing but time and a stitched badge that says you belong nowhere else. The sun dips low, turning the horizon a bruised plum. As you round a bend, you see a fence. Not a grand, noble barrier, just a wooden rail with half its posts snapped. Beyond it, rooftops, slanted, moss-covered. Quiet, no smoke, no sound. You approach slowly, like the houses might startle. Then you see the figures, still, scattered, sitting on porches. At first you think they're dead, but one raises a hand, just slightly. Another waves a spoon, they're alive. You step past the gate. No one stops you. A man emerges from a nearby doorway. He's tall, beard braided with twine, wearing an apron stained with something brown and sticky. Molasses, maybe. Or blood. Hard to tell these days. He looks at the badge peeking from your coat. "You ran," he says. You nod. "Good." He gestures you forward. "You'll want the inn. Don't worry. No one pays here. Not anymore." You pass under a sign shaped like a crow, the inn's name worn clean off. Inside, the warmth surprises you. Actual warmth. A fire. Not just a fire. People by the fire. They glance up, nodding with the kind of exhaustion that says, "We see you, but we're too tired to care right now." A girl about your age hands you a bowl of something that smells like turnips and secrets. You eat it without asking questions. Later, the innkeeper, a woman with a limp and a laugh like rolling stones, shows you your room. It's small but real, a bed, a blanket, a window that locks. You sleep like you've been unplugged from the world. In the morning, the town feels different. Still quiet, but busy in that soft, circular way that life used to feel. People tend to small gardens. Someone's repairing a wheelbarrow. A child chases a chicken with more enthusiasm than strategy. You talk to no one for the first few days. You just watch. But slowly, your presence weaves into the rhythm. Someone asks you to help gather firewood. Someone else teaches you how to knot fishing line. A woman with more laugh lines than teeth shows you how to tell edible mushrooms from brain leakers. No one mentions the plague. Not out loud. But they carry it in the way they avoid touch. The way they sniff the air when the wind changes. The way no one sings anymore. Not even the children. There's a story the innkeeper tells one night over stew. She says Meyer Cross used to sing, long ago, before the ribbon markers. She says the last song ever sung was a lullaby for a boy whose parents vanished overnight. The whole town gathered to sing him to sleep, and no one dared hum again after. You try to imagine what the boy looks like now. Maybe he's the man who handed you a spoon when you arrived. Historians still argue whether villages like Meyer Cross truly defied the odds or were simply spared by chance. Some say they had secret herbs. Others claim they sacrificed outsiders. You suspect the truth is much duller and much sadder. They just closed their eyes and hoped harder. A week into your stay, you get a job of sorts, burying the old things. Not people, though you get the feeling there are still a few shallow graves no one wants to talk about. But items from before. Plague masks, ribbons, letters that smell too strongly of regret. They don't burn anything here. Fire's too precious. They bury memories instead, one wooden box at a time. You find it therapeutic. Dig, lower, cover, repeat. One day, while clearing an abandoned cottage at the edge of the village, you find a painting. It's rough, almost childish, but you know what it is the moment you see it. A feather, white and curved, sitting in a mug beside a flower. You freeze. It's your feather, your flower, your mug. You check the back of the canvas, faint scratches in the wood. For the one who would come. You sit down. That night you dream of the baker, walking the shoreline, laughing as waves lick her ankles. You dream of the lion and the skeleton playing chess again, except now the lion is winning. You wake with the rising sun and realize something strange. For the first time in a long while, you're not afraid of the silence. It's become a kind of music. And you know deep in your bones that surviving wasn't the ending. It was just the next beginning. You fall into the rhythm of Meyer Cross, like a forgotten verse returning to the melody. Days start to blend, not in a way that makes them meaningless, but in a way that feels oddly safe. Your hands learn new skills without you noticing. Your feet find paths they didn't know yesterday. You even start humming again. Not full songs, of course. No one does. But little patterns, notes with no names. The sort of half-melodies you hum while shelling peas or turning compost. It's how you know you're healing. Your brain has room for nonsense again. But nonsense doesn't last long around here. It starts with a smell. One morning, the innkeeper walks into the kitchen, pauses and sniffs. "Salt," she says. "You sniff too." She's right. The wind is carrying something new, sharp, oceanic. Salt. There's no sea near Meyer Cross. That's the point. It's landlocked, surrounded by fields, hedgerows, and superstition. The nearest salt source should be miles away. But by midday, the smell gets stronger. The man with the spoon, your first nodding friend, comes to you after lunch. "We think someone opened a gate," he says, as if this is normal. Like someone breaking a seal on another world. Apparently, the village has boundaries. Not physical ones, but old ones. Ones no one explains in full. People nod toward hedgerows and say things like, "Don't walk past the third ash tree," or "If you see the black lamb, turn around." You thought it was folklore. Now you're not so sure. The salt smell spreads faster than plague ever did. You taste it in your tea, you feel it in your hair. The chickens stop laying eggs, the bees vanish. Someone wakes screaming about a wave in the cellar. They call a gathering. It's not a meeting. No votes, no debates. Just a quiet congregation by the well at dusk, faces lit by candlelight. The old woman who taught you about mushrooms stands and simply says, "It's breached." Everyone nods. You don't understand, so you ask. Brave or stupid, you're not sure anymore. "It was meant to keep them out," she says. "The ones who watch from behind the sickness." You think of the feather, the man with the clipboard, the bells. "Who are they?" you ask. She smiles, soft and sad. Who knows? Historians still argue whether they're real. But the people of Myrecross believe. They believe that the plague wasn't just bacteria on rats, or bad air, or punishment from above. They believe it was a distraction, that while the world mourned and buried and wailed, something else moved. A door opened, a veil slipped, and they came in. Not devils, not angels, just something adjacent, close enough to mimic, far enough to misunderstand. They don't want to kill, the Spoon Man tells you later. They want to catalog, to repurpose, like antique dealers, but for souls. It would be funny if it didn't make so much sense. You remember how empty the world felt, not just sick, but gutted, as though the plague swept out more than bodies, as though someone was tidying up for a new tenant. The villagers begin to prepare. But not like you're thinking. No weapons, no barricades. They unmake things. They dismantle the wind vane, pull down the scarecrow, let the gardens go wild. They can't track chaos, the innkeeper explains. Only order. They unname paths, mix up tools, flip ladders upside down. A boy paints his face with soot and berry juice, then walks backward for an hour. No one corrects him. That night, you dream again. This time, it's the chapel. The lion and skeleton play in silence. But now there's a third figure watching. No face, just a hood, and something like wings that don't move. You wake sweating. When you go downstairs, the inn is empty. Not abandoned, just paused. You step outside and see it. The salt line. A thin path of white, cutting clean through the dirt down the center of the road. No footprints cross it, no breeze scatters it. It hasn't just arrived. It's waiting. You think of the stitched badge in your coat, the one the cloaked woman gave you. You haven't looked at it in days. Now, you take it out. The circle is fading. You show it to the innkeeper. She frowns. That means they've marked you again. Why? You ask. I left. I did everything I was supposed to. She sighs. They don't like loose ends. You sit on the porch, watching the line. Nothing moves, but you feel watched. A low, pulsing hum enters your ears, so faint it might be imagined. You want to cover your ears, but that feels noticed. You stay still. In the distance, you see a figure, small, bent, walking with a cane. It's the old man from your street, the one who kept sweeping the same step day after day, like a glitch in reality. He shouldn't be here. He stops just short of the salt line, looks directly at you, and smiles. Not kindly, not sadly, just correctly, like someone who's read the last page already. You blink. He's gone. The line remains. That night, the village holds a second gathering. This time, it's around the fire pit near the edge of the field. They begin to speak in patterns, rhythms, not quite poetry, not quite prayer. It feels like code, like they're telling the wind how to forget them. You join in, unsure why, but the rhythm catches you. And for a moment you feel it, the weight of memory falling off. It's not salvation, but it's something like survival. You wake before the sun, the air thick with expectation. Myrecross feels different now, not just wary, but liminal, like it's leaning just slightly out of sync with the world you thought you knew. The salt line still cuts through the road, precise and unbothered. No breeze touches it. No birds land near it. And no one crosses it, not even the children, who used to be reckless in the way only the truly traumatized can bass. The town's rhythm slows. Breakfast is quieter. Tasks stretch longer. Everyone watches the trees more than usual, especially the third ash. You don't ask questions. Not anymore. You just move through the day like a ghost still trying to pay rent. That morning, the spoon man, his name is Cal, you've finally learned, takes you to a barn that hasn't been opened since before the last frost. He tells you it's time. Time for what? To remember what we forgot. Inside, the barn smells of old hay and damp secrets. The dust hangs like a curtain. You see boxes, crates, scrolls tied in leather, a stack of broken clocks, and something wrapped in what looks suspiciously like a nun's habit. This is the archive, Cal says reverently. But you bury memories, you say. He nods. Some, but not all. These are the ones too dangerous to forget. You take cautious steps. On the far table, you spot a mask. Not a plague doctor's beak, but something older. Almost theatrical. Comedic, even. Its smile is wide and cracked. That's the mask of relief, Cal says. Doesn't look very relieved. He snorts. It's named after a fever dream someone had. Said the mask helped them breathe when the air turned thick with watchers. Others say it suffocates you with old joy until you forget pain exists. Historians still argue whether it was real or symbolic, you murmur, getting a laugh from him. You spend hours sifting through the relics. None are labeled. The villagers believe writing a name gives it power, so everything is known only through story. There's a child's drawing of a four-eyed sheep with a halo of worms, a pewter goblet that can't be emptied, a bone comb that makes your scalp tingle just by looking at it. Then you find it. Feather. Not a big one, just palm-sized, made of something between bronze and regret. You pick it up before Cal can stop you. It rings, softly. Your ears ring back. The air shivers. Cal yanks it from your hand and buries it in a pile of grain sacks. Not that one, he says. What did I do? Invited them to listen. He doesn't explain further. But that night you hear footsteps on your roof, just once. And then the crow calls. No one's seen crows in Myrecross for months. They left after the fever took old Thomas, as if they'd decided the air was too thick with sorrow to fly through. But this one lands right on your windowsill and stares. You stare back. It cocks its head and squawks once. You blink, and it's gone. In the morning, a white feather rests on the sill. Not again, you think. You go to the old woman with laugh lines. Her name is Mira, because of course it is. She listens patiently as you describe the crow, the bell, the feather. She doesn't flinch. Crows are the last mailmen, she says. When the gates begin to fray, they start delivering again. Delivering what? Memories or warnings, depending on what you've forgotten. You remember the dream again. The lion, the skeleton, the hooded figure with the still wings. Have you seen the chapel? You ask. Her face shifts, not with fear, but with recognition. Long time since someone asked about that, she says. It's not gone, just moved. Moved. She takes your hand. Not all places stay in one place. So you go looking, past the third ash, through bramble that tugs at your sleeves like it remembers you. And there, in a clearing, you don't remember ever being there before. It stands, smaller than your dream, but undeniably the same. A ruined chapel. Ivy has claimed its stone ribs. Stained glass hangs like broken teeth in the windows. You push the door open. It groans. Inside it's cooler, mustier. You breathe in time. The chessboard is still there, but the lion is gone. Only the skeleton remains, slouched in a throne carved from something that might once have been oak. Its hand rests on a pawn, waiting. There's another bell on the altar. This one's cracked clean through. You don't touch it. You kneel instead. Not in prayer, but in curiosity. Behind the altar, half buried under leaves, is a mural. You brush it clean. It's crude, like it was carved by someone in a hurry. But you know what it shows. People sitting in a circle, each wearing a different mask. One smiles, one cries, one yawns, and one wears your face. Not literally, but enough to make your spine perform a sad little backflip. Underneath, a single word is scratched in looping script. Remember. You don't take the bell. You take a stone from the floor. Smooth and black, warm in your hand despite the cold. When you return to the village, Mira nods before you speak. You saw it, she says. You ask her what it means. She just says, "You've been here before." You shake your head. "No," she says softly. "Not you. But your shape, your kind. Every time the world resets, someone has to walk it again." That night, you sit by the fire and try to understand what it means to be a recycled echo. Someone hands you stew. The children laugh for the first time in days. The salt line is still there, but now it has a break in it. Just a hairline crack. Like someone knocked on a door and it flinched open. You eat your stew and wait for the next crow. Days stretch, slow and heavy, as if time itself is hesitating in mire cross. The crack in the salt line has barely widened, but the change is palpable. People move with more purpose, as if they're aware that something unseen is stirring just beyond the hedge. You notice it most in the children, those little bundles of chaotic hope, who no longer flinch when they cross the line to fetch firewood or chase stray animals. One morning, as you're gathering herbs near the edge of the village, a whispering breeze carries a faint melody. It's just beyond hearing, teasing your ears with the edges of a forgotten song. You follow it, deeper into the woods, to a place where the trees bend into an arch. There, nestled beneath moss and fallen leaves, you find a tiny music box, its gears rusted but still ticking faintly. You wind it up. The melody trickles out, fractured, eerie, yet somehow comforting. You recognize it. The lullaby the innkeeper mentioned. The one sung to the boy who lost his parents. It's the same song you dreamt of, the one that marked the end of singing in the village. You tuck the music box into your coat and head back. That evening, the villagers gather again, this time around the fire pit, holding hands in a circle. Mira begins to sing, her voice cracking but unwavering. The others join in, tentative at first, then stronger. The lullaby flows through the clearing like a gentle tide, washing away shadows you didn't realize were lingering. You close your eyes and let the song wrap around you. It feels like a balm, stitching the frayed edges of your soul. But the peace is fragile. The next day, you notice something odd. Footprints in the dirt that lead toward the salt line, but none return. They're too small to be human, too perfect to be animal. You show Cal, who frowns. "They're watching," he says quietly. "Always watching." You realize the watchers aren't just outside the village. They're inside, too. In the quiet glances, the whispered conversations, the sudden silences when you enter a room, you start to question who's really safe here. One night, a storm rolls in, fierce and sudden. The wind howls like it's carrying voices from another world. Lightning splits the sky, illuminating the village in brief, harsh flashes. You find yourself drawn to the chapel again, compelled by something you can't name. Inside, the skeleton still sits on its throne, motionless. But as the storm rages, the cracked bell on the altar begins to ring, softly at first, then louder, until it fills the space with a haunting echo. You cover your ears, but the sound penetrates, vibrating through your bones. The skeleton's empty eye sockets seem to flicker with life. You swear you see a shadow move behind it. A dark figure with wings that don't flutter, just stretch like smoke. The bells stop. Silence. You stumble outside, heart pounding. The storm has passed, leaving the world washed clean and still. Back at the inn, the villagers whisper of the bells ringing, a sign, a warning, a summons. Mira says it means the veil between worlds is thinning, that the watchers are growing restless. You spend the night tossing and turning, haunted by dreams of the lion, the skeleton, and the winged figure. They play chess again, but this time the game feels urgent, like a countdown. In the days that follow, the village prepares, not with weapons, but with rituals. They cleanse their homes with smoke and salt, weave charms from herbs, and share stories of old magic and forgotten gods. You learn that survival here isn't just about outlasting the plague. It's about navigating a delicate balance between worlds. One afternoon, Cal takes you to a hidden glade where ancient stones circle a small pool. He explains that this is a place where the veil is thinnest, a crossroads of sorts. Here, villagers come to leave offerings, simple things like feathers, coins, and scraps of cloth, to appease the watchers. You add the music box to the pile. As you turn to leave, a soft voice whispers your name. You spin around, but no one is there. Only the ripple on the pool's surface, reflecting the cloudy sky. You realize that surviving the plague wasn't just about fighting disease. It was about confronting the unseen, the mysterious forces that lurk at the edges of reality, waiting to claim what's left behind. And now, you're part of that story. The days blur, but the weight in your chest grows heavier. Meyercross is no longer just a village. It's a crossroads of fate, of memory, and of shadow. You catch yourself watching every corner, listening for the faintest whisper of movement in the hedgerows, the forest edges, even the cracked stone walls of the chapel. One morning, Mira pulls you aside. Her eyes are tired but sharp, like she's carrying a secret she's barely able to keep. "There's a story you need to hear," she says, motioning you to sit by the fire. You settle down, the firelight flickering on her weathered face. "Long before the plague, before any of us remember," she begins, "this land was home to a covenant of watchers. Not guardians exactly, but keepers. Their job was to watch the veil, to ensure it didn't tear. But something went wrong. The veil frayed, and the watchers began to slip through." You nod, feeling the familiar chill of the unknown crawl down your spine. "They tried to fix it," she continues, "but the plague was their distraction, a distraction that nearly destroyed us all. The watchers cataloged, rearranged, and in some cases took." You swallow. Took what? Souls, memories, hopes, things that couldn't be seen but were felt deeply. That's why survival was worse than dying. The watchers don't just take lives, they take pieces of who you are, leaving shadows behind. You remember the hollow eyes of the skeleton, the cold smile of the lion, and the hooded figure's wings. This fits too neatly. Mira reaches into her pouch and pulls out a small, delicate vial filled with a shimmering blue liquid. This is called the Echo's Breath. It's said to hold fragments of lost memories, like catching smoke in a jar. You look at it, mesmerized. "Drink it," she says, "but be warned. Memories are not always kind, and the Watchers feed on your fear. You hesitate, but the pull of knowing is stronger than fear. You take a sip. The world shifts. Suddenly, you're not in Myrecross. You're somewhere else. Someone else. A bustling medieval market, alive with color and noise, but with a sickly undertone. You see faces distorted by fear and exhaustion. Smell the smoke of burning herbs and the stench of unwashed bodies. You're watching yourself. No, someone like you move through the crowd, clutching a small child's hand, trying to find food, safety, a place to hide. A voice whispers behind you. Remember. You turn, but no one is there. Then the plague hits. You see the fevered faces, the empty homes, the piles of bodies. The Watchers move among them, cataloging, taking notes, marking. You snap back to the firelight, gasping. Mira looks at you with sympathy. The Echo's breath shows you the cost, not just to the body, but to the soul. You wipe your mouth, feeling the weight of 1,000 lost stories pressing on your chest. Why did you give this to me? You ask. Because you need to understand what survival truly means. The Watchers don't just want to know you survived, they want to know who you were before. Outside, the village settles into uneasy silence. The salt line seems to shimmer faintly in the moonlight. You realize that your journey through Myrecross isn't just about staying alive. It's about reclaiming the pieces of yourself that the plague, and whatever came with it, tried to steal. And maybe, just maybe, finding a way to mend the veil before the Watchers decide they've taken enough. The next morning, you find yourself drawn back to the salt line. It feels less like a boundary now and more like a thread connecting two worlds. Fragile, yet pulsing with quiet energy. You kneel at the crack that's grown wider, tracing it with your finger. And for a moment, it feels as though the earth beneath you is breathing, alive and restless. Cal joins you, holding a lantern even though the sun is fully awake. You're thinking about crossing, aren't you? He asks, eyes glinting with a mix of warning and challenge. You nod slowly. I have to see what's on the other side, to understand what's watching us. He exhales, the breath heavy with years of secrets. Most never come back the same, if at all. The Watchers don't like being disturbed. But your curiosity, and the strange pull inside you, wins. Together you step over the salt line. The world shifts instantly. The colors drain away, replaced by a gray haze that clings to your skin like cold ash. The air tastes metallic, thick with the scent of old iron and forgotten sorrow. Trees here are twisted, their branches clawing at the sky, leaves blackened and brittle. You shiver. As you move forward, shadows flit at the edge of your vision, ghostly figures draped in tattered cloaks, their eyes glowing faintly like embers. They don't speak but watch, unblinking. Cal stops beside a stone well, ancient and crumbling. "This place is the threshold," he whispers. "The Watcher's waiting room." You peer down the well's dark throat, feeling the pull of something ancient stirring below. It's as if the well connect to the very roots of the veil, a gateway between what was, what is, and what might be. Suddenly, a figure steps from the mist, a woman cloaked in white, her face pale and unreadable. She holds a mirror that reflects not your face, but a shifting collage of memories. Laughter, fear, loss, and hope. "You carry too much," she says softly. "The Watchers sense it." You swallow hard. "What do you want from me?" "Balance," she replies. "To survive the plague is to carry the dead within you. The Watchers take their due, but you can choose what to give." Her words echo in your mind as you realize that surviving wasn't just about enduring sickness or isolation. It was about carrying the weight of everyone who didn't make it, each memory, each regret, each love lost. You turn to Cal. How do we fight that? He shrugs, the lines on his face deepening. We don't fight it, we accept it, and in acceptance, find strength. As you walk back through the gray haze toward the village, you understand something profound. Surviving the plague means living with a fractured soul, pieced together from shadows and light. You cross the salt line again, the air brightening as you step back into Meyercross. The Watchers remain, but now they feel less like predators and more like reminders, silent sentinels marking the cost of life and death. That night, the village gathers once more, not to mourn or fear, but to remember. Stories are shared, tears fall, and laughter returns like a tentative bird testing its wings. You look around, feeling the strange comfort of shared pain and the fragile hope of healing. In surviving, you realize you've become part of a story larger than yourself. A story not just about death, but about what it means to live despite it. You wake to the soft hum of dawn seeping through your window, the air thick with a new kind of quiet, the kind that's not empty but waiting. The villagers move with purpose, their faces etched with the strange mix of exhaustion and resolve you've come to know well. Today is different. You hear whispers that the council will convene. Those who survived longest, those who saw the most, gathered to decide what comes next. It feels like the weight of the whole village is pressing down on your chest. And maybe it is. You find Cal and Mira by the old well in the square. The same well you saw on the other side of the salt line, but here it looks less ominous, more a reminder of shared history. Today, Mira says, eyes scanning the crowd gathering in the square, we acknowledge that surviving the plague is not the end. It's a beginning of reckoning, of rebuilding, and of remembering what we lost. You feel the meaning behind her words like a gentle strike. The plague took much, but survival meant bearing the scars, the ghosts, and the stories that refuse to be silenced. The council speaks of rebuilding homes, planting crops, and mending fractured relationships. But there's a deeper conversation bubbling just beneath the surface. How to live with the Watchers, how to honor those taken without being consumed by grief. A young woman stands, her voice steady despite trembling hands. We need rituals, not just to ward off darkness, but to celebrate light, to remind us that life, even fractured, is worth holding on to. Her words spark murmurs of agreement and hope. You notice the children gathering stones and flowers, crafting small altars around the village. They wear masks, not of fear, but of celebration, bright colors, feathers, and ribbons woven with laughter. You think back to the mask of relief in the barn, the one that might suffocate or might breathe life. Maybe survival is like that mask, both a burden and a blessing. The sun climbs higher, casting long shadows that seem less threatening today. The salt line shimmers faintly, as if acknowledging the village's tentative steps toward healing. Later, you walk the familiar path to the ruined chapel, the chessboard still waiting on the altar. The lion is still gone, but the skeleton's empty hand now holds a single white feather, the one you saw left by the crow. You smile, a quiet understanding settling in your bones. Surviving the plague was worse than dying, not just because of the sickness or the loss, but because living meant carrying a world shattered and piecing it back together. It meant facing shadows, hearing the silent Watchers, and still choosing to step forward. As night falls, the village gathers around fires once more. Stories are told, not just of fear and loss, but of resilience, of moments when kindness flickered like a candle in the dark. You feel the weight of your journey ease slightly, replaced by a fragile hope. Outside, the crow calls again, a single, clear note piercing the night. You close your eyes and listen, knowing that surviving is just the start of a new story. The mornings in Meyercross have started to hum with a different rhythm, a soft but steady beat of renewal. You notice it in the way the mist no longer clings like a shroud, but drifts playfully across the fields, and in how the salt line's edges flicker with a faint golden glow at dawn. It's subtle, but it speaks of something changing, something tentative, but real. You join Mira and Cal on the outskirts of the village where wildflowers have begun to reclaim patches of the scorched earth. Mira hands you a handful of seeds, their shells smooth and warm against your palm. "Plant these," she says, her voice steady. "Not just for food, but to remind us that growth is possible, even after loss." You dig small holes in the soil, pressing the seeds gently into the earth. It feels strange, almost like you're planting hope itself. Around you, others do the same, their movements quiet but determined. As you work, Cal points out the shapes in the sky, clouds forming strange figures, sometimes a lion, sometimes a bird. "The watchers are restless," he mutters, "but maybe they're curious too." You chuckle softly. Or bored out of their eternal minds. Historians still argue whether the watchers were spirits of the dead or guardians from another realm, but you suspect they are something in between, a reminder that some mysteries refuse to be pinned down. Later, you visit the old bakery, where a few survivors have begun baking bread again. The scent of warm crust fills the air, a small, stubborn act of normalcy in a village scarred by plague and shadow. Inside, an elderly woman tells you about her mother's secret recipe, handed down through generations, designed to bring luck and protection. She sprinkles herbs into the dough, rosemary, thyme, and something she calls heart's ease. You bite into a fresh loaf and savor the mix of flavors, earthy, sharp, comforting. It strikes you how simple acts like this, baking bread, planting seeds, sharing stories, are the true acts of survival, not just of the body, but of the spirit. That night, as you lay down under the thin blanket, you hear a familiar tapping on the window. The crow is back, its eyes gleaming in the moonlight. It caws once, then settles on the sill. You reach out slowly, and the bird drops a small object into your palm, a smooth stone etched with tiny symbols. You turn it over, feeling a strange warmth pulse through your fingers. It's a reminder, you realize, a sign that surviving means more than just living. It means carrying forward, carrying meaning. You smile into the darkness and whisper, "Thanks for the reminder." Outside, the village sleeps under a sky thick with stars, each one a silent witness to the lives lived, lost, and slowly rebuilding. And you, somewhere in the quiet, feel a flicker of peace. The days lengthen, stretching lazily into warm afternoons that smell of damp earth and blossoming grass. You walk through Meyercross and notice subtle shifts, the way laughter returns in hesitant bursts, how children's games echo through the streets, and how the villagers' eyes, once dull and haunted, now spark with cautious optimism. You find Mira weaving garlands of wildflowers, her hands steady but her gaze distant. "We're learning to live with the shadows," she says, "not to be controlled by them." That phrase settles with you. Living with the shadows, not vanquishing, not running, but existing alongside. The watchers, those silent sentinels, are still here. You see their shapes in the flicker of a candle flame, hear their soft breath in the wind, and feel their gaze on the edges of your thoughts. But the terror has faded into something like respect, a quiet acknowledgement of the cost paid and the fragile peace earned. One afternoon, you join Cal by the salt line. He's marking the boundary with fresh lines of salt, his movements deliberate. "This line isn't just protection," he says. "It's a promise, a reminder that boundaries are as much about what we hold inside as what we keep out." You think about the memories you carry, the lost faces, the whispered stories, the weight of survival, and realize the line is also a boundary between who you were and who you must become. That night, the village gathers for the first time in months inside the chapel, now bathed in soft candlelight. The chessboard remains on the altar, pieces arranged mid-game, frozen in time. The lion's absence is a silent gap, a space for the stories yet untold. Mira begins to sing, her voice weaving through the rafters like a thread of light. Others join, voices rising in a chorus of hope and remembrance. The song is old, yet new, an anthem for those who survived not just the plague, but the darkness within and around it. You close your eyes and feel the melody settle in your bones. Historians still argue whether the plague was merely a biological disaster or a spiritual reckoning. But here, in the quiet light of the chapel, none of that matters. What matters is the community forged in fire, the resilience that blooms in broken places. You think back to the music box and the lullaby, the chess game, the watchers, and the salt line, all pieces of a puzzle that, while incomplete, form a picture of endurance. Surviving the plague was worse than dying because it demanded everything: your body, your memories, your soul. But now you understand that survival is also a beginning. A slow, uncertain, beautiful journey toward healing. Outside, the crow's call pierces the night once more, a reminder that some stories never end. And as you settle down, you feel ready to face whatever comes next. Morning breaks gentle and golden, filtering through cracked windows like a soft promise. You awake with a lingering sense of quiet resolve, a feeling that the village, and perhaps even you, are turning a corner. The plague's shadow hasn't vanished. It can't. But it's learning to coexist with a budding light. You wander through the village, noticing how the survivors have begun adapting, embracing rituals both new and ancient. In the square, an elder leads a cleansing ceremony, waving smoke through the air while chanting in a language almost forgotten. The scent of sage and pine fills the space, mingling with the faint tang of salt. Curiously, you recall reading that many medieval communities used smoke not just for purification, but as a way to confuse spirits, to cloud the watcher's gaze. Historians still argue whether such rituals were born of desperation or deep spiritual insight. But here, in Meyercross, they serve as balm. A child approaches you, clutching a tiny wooden bird carved from ash wood. She offers it with solemn eyes, saying it's to guard you from the watchers when the night feels too close. You accept it, warmth spreading through your palm. As the day wanes, you find yourself near the ancient forest where the veil once frayed so badly. The trees stand tall and silent, their branches whispering secrets in the wind. You trace your fingers along the bark of a gnarled oak, feeling the pulse of time beneath your skin. You remember the stories Mira told you, the watchers slipping through the veil, taking pieces of memory and hope. But maybe those same trees, rooted deep in the earth, hold the power to mend what's broken. You sit beneath the canopy, eyes closing as the forest's hush envelops you. Your breath slows, heart steadying. In this stillness, you sense the watchers less as ominous presences and more as part of a larger balance, a reminder that life and death, loss and renewal are threads woven tightly together. Night falls, and as you return to Meyercross, the village feels softer, more alive. Fires flicker in windows, laughter bubbles up like a healing spring, and the salt line glows faintly, a beacon rather than a barrier. You tuck the wooden bird safely in your pocket. Surviving the plague was worse than dying, yes. But maybe the hardest part is learning how to carry what's lost without being crushed by it. The watchers will always be there, but so will you. And that, you think, might just be enough. The air feels crisper now, touched by early autumn's breath. You walk along the edge of Meyer Cross, where the salt line shimmers faintly beneath fallen leaves, scattered like forgotten memories. The village is quieter these days, not empty, but reflective, as if each person is holding a private vigil for what's been lost and what remains. You meet an old man named Tom, who's been quietly repairing a worn wooden cart. His hands tremble slightly, but his eyes gleam with determination. Survival, he says when you ask him what kept him going, isn't just about staying alive. It's about finding meaning after the worst. He tells you about the plague's aftermath, the strange, lingering fog that sometimes rolls in from the woods, thick with silence and cold. Some say it's the Watcher's breath. Others believe it's the earth mourning. Historians still debate whether this fog was a natural phenomenon or something more supernatural, a residue of trauma imprinted on the land. You recall the skeleton's eerie grin in the chapel, the crow's sharp caws at twilight, and the whispered tales of watchers, all signs that survival leaves scars deeper than skin and bone. Tom hands you a small charm, a twisted piece of iron shaped like a key. "Keeps the dark at bay," he says with a wink. You slip it into your pocket, grateful for the human kindness amid the lingering shadows. That evening, a storm rolls in, lightning fracturing the sky in jagged lines. The village huddles indoors, fires flickering bravely against the roar of wind. You sit by the hearth, watching the flames dance and crackle. It strikes you how fire has become a symbol here, light in darkness, warmth in cold, hope amid despair. You think of the plague's devastation and how surviving felt like walking through fire itself. Each step forward was a choice to endure pain and fear, loss and isolation. The Watchers remain, watching, waiting, their presence a constant reminder of the thin line between life and death. But so does the fire in the hearth, the laughter in the streets, the courage in the villagers' hearts. Survival wasn't just about avoiding death. It was about finding the flame that keeps you burning even when everything tries to snuff you out. And tonight, that flame feels stronger than ever. Dawn spills its pale light over Meyer Cross, casting long, cool shadows across the village streets. You wander to the edge of the salt line, feeling the familiar crunch beneath your boots, this threshold that's become both a boundary and a bridge. Today, a group of villagers gathers, carrying bundles of herbs, candles, and scraps of cloth. They're preparing for a ceremony to honor those lost to the plague and to mark a new chapter for the survivors. You join them, the weight of shared grief and fragile hope settling around like a soft blanket. The ritual begins with the lighting of candles, their flames flickering gently against the morning breeze. One by one, names are called aloud, voices trembling but resolute, remembering friends, family, neighbors. Mira steps forward, holding a small box filled with salt from the line. She scatters it over the earth, chanting words in a tongue older than the village itself. Historians still argue about the origins of salt rituals. Some see them as protective magic, others as symbols of purification and renewal. You watch the Watchers, those shadowy figures just beyond the firelight, and wonder if they understand this act of remembrance. Maybe they do. Maybe they even respect it. The ceremony closes with a song, soft and haunting, weaving through the trees and into the sky. As the last notes fade, you feel something shift. Not a lifting of the Watchers, but a settling, an acceptance. You realize surviving the plague meant carrying heavy burdens, memories of loss, fear, and loneliness. but also the strength to honor those burdens without being crushed. The salt line still glows faintly, but it no longer feels like a prison. It's a marker of resilience. You walk back through the village, the echoes of the ceremony lingering in your mind. Survival wasn't simply about beating death. It was about learning to live with what death leaves behind. And as you settle in for the night, you carry with you the quiet certainty that even in darkness, light finds a way. Night falls with a velvet hush, the village cloaked in shadows but glowing softly with lantern light. You wander past familiar houses, their windows aglow with flickering candles, and pause near the salt line, now shimmering faintly under a silver moon. Your thoughts drift back to the plague, the fever, the silence, the endless waiting, and to the strange watchers who haunt the edges of memory and reality. They've become part of the village's heartbeat, reminders that survival is more than breathing. It's bearing the weight of loss and the echo of every life cut short. You meet an old friend, Ilara, who shares stories of dreams she's had since the plague ended, visions of bridges made of light and shadows turning to dust. It's like the Watchers are trying to tell us something, she muses. Maybe that healing isn't just for the living. Historians still debate whether such dreams were psychological scars or messages from beyond. But here, among survivors, the lines blur. You both walk to the chapel, where the chessboard remains, a silent testament to unfinished games and stories paused. Ilara traces the pieces with her fingers, a soft smile touching her lips. "We survived," she whispers. "But now we have to remember how to live." The crow appears again, its black feathers gleaming in the lantern light. It caws once and then flies off into the night, a sentinel of the past and a herald of what's to come. You watch it go, feeling a quiet peace settle over you. Surviving the plague was worse than dying because it forced you to carry the ghosts of the dead, to live with shadows that never fully leave. But in carrying them, you've also carried hope, resilience, and the promise of renewal. The Watchers may linger, but so does the village, alive, breathing, and slowly healing. You turn back toward the warmth of home, ready for whatever the next day brings. The first light of dawn stretches gently over Mire Cross, softening the village's edges and bathing everything in a warm, forgiving glow. You stand at the edge of the salt line one last time, feeling the weight of all that's past and all that remains. The Watchers, ever present but less menacing now, seem to retreat just a little, giving space for life to breathe. The village stirs awake, the usual morning chorus of birds blending with the hum of quiet conversations and footsteps on worn paths. Children play freely again, their laughter a delicate thread weaving through the healing tapestry of this place. You find Mira and Cal near the well, their faces calm but thoughtful, sharing a moment of silence before the day begins. There's a sense of peace here, not the absence of sorrow, but the presence of acceptance. You reflect on the long journey, the plague's cruel grip, the loneliness, the fear, and the countless moments when giving up seemed easier than holding on. Surviving wasn't just a physical feat, but an emotional odyssey through darkness and light. The Watcher's shadows still flicker at the edge of your vision, a reminder that some things never fully disappear, but they no longer bring terror. Instead, they mark the boundary between the past and the future. You carry the stories of those lost, the lessons learned, and the fragile hope that blossoms like the wildflowers reclaiming the land. As evening falls, the village gathers once more around the fires, sharing stories, songs, and quiet laughter. The chessboard remains in the chapel, a symbol of unfinished battles and new beginnings, And as you lie down to rest, the soft hum of the night wraps around you like a lullaby. Surviving the plague was worse than dying because it demanded you carry a world shattered. And yet, here you are, still standing, still breathing, still hopeful. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The night settles softly now, a gentle curtain drawn over the day's sharp edges. You feel the slow, steady rhythm of your breath, each inhale and exhale a quiet anchor in the swirling tides of memory and emotion. The village, once fractured by fear and loss, now breathes in gentle harmony, its heartbeat a soothing cadence beneath the stars. Imagine the watchers, their shadows long but fading, their presence a quiet testament to what has been endured. They remind us that survival is not forgetting but remembering, not running but staying, not surrendering but carrying forward. You think of the wildflowers blooming where scars once ran deep, the laughter that bubbles like a fragile spring, the simple acts of kindness that stitch broken hearts back together. The salt line, once a harsh barrier, now glows softly, a boundary of hope rather than fear. Rest now, knowing that carrying the weight of loss is an act of profound courage, that living beyond the plague's shadow is not forgetting those taken, but honoring them by choosing to live, to hope, to rebuild. Close your eyes, let the soft night hum cradle you, and drift gently into peace. End of script. Sweet dreams.